I think that's in focus. Let's see here, and I really need to get an autofocus attachment for this damn lens. A couple of years ago, I had a pretty big eye-opening experience, and I figured it's about time that I talk about it. A year before I moved, at my previous job, there was a guy that moved in from Baltimore, and me and him had a lot in common. We both hated the place we were working at, so we kicked it off pretty easily. As we all know, hatred just seems to bring everybody together, right? But he was like fresh from Baltimore. He had just driven up, or driven down, I should say, to South Florida. And one day, one of the things that we talked about were, like how his move ended up going and a few things that he felt, after he moved. One of them specifically being that he felt like none of his friends were actually there for him when he moved or even afterwards. Even his childhood friend, months later, when I asked, hadn't called him. Like it was like 6 months after he had moved down to South Florida, and not even his childhood friend called him. Fast forward a year later, here I am in the process of getting ready to move to a completely different state and just start a new life elsewhere. And just like he did, I told everybody well beforehand, so that way, I can make sure I make plans with people, and people can know actually that I'm gonna be leaving. And through telling people, I was able to catch up with some of them, and then others actually either offered to help me move some of my stuff, and then a couple of friends offered to pass by that day, just basically say bye before I'm out. And this is when things started getting a little weird, right? There were two things that happened. I held up three fingers, but there were two things that just really had me questioning a lot, man. It really had me questioning a lot when I was in the process of moving. One of them being, before I moved, I had an older childhood friend of mine. We had actually picked a date to hang out and talk. We haven't talked in like about a year or two. Normally, we stayed in contact with each other, just saying what's up, seeing what's going on. And we had scheduled a day for us to hang out before I moved, and everything was cool until the day of. We were literally talking the day before, and the day of, I got zero response from him. No social media, like everything was just wiped as if he never existed. And I was like, huh, like that's kind of crazy. Maybe something happened to him, because I have had that happen in the past. And then, a couple months down the line, I see like recommended friends, and it's his same exact profile from before I even moved. I was on my second account back when I had a personal and business account, so that's why I was able to see that. And it's like, bro, if you didn't want to chill, like I'm perfectly okay with that. You didn't have to go to the extent of blocking me on everything. I just didn't understand it, right? And that was the first thing that was just like really like, what the hell just happened? Now comes the day of the actual move. Time passes by about that. I'm just like, it's whatever, right? But time passes by. It's the day of the move, and I'm whipping up breakfast for the people that are supposed to show up. I had coffee ready. Me and my fiance were in the process of basically just getting everything set up, so that way once people come, we can just do our thing and then get right back to work, or get right to work. So my family ends up coming. They have breakfast with us, and instantly they just start helping me unload everything, or not unload, but bring everything down from the house into the U-Haul that was downstairs. We were on the third floor, keep in mind. So, thank God for my dad and my uncle for being there, because they had the actual tools too, like a dolly and all this other stuff, to really help make it so much faster. And they were able to bring down all the boxes. So everybody else that was supposed to come would have just had to just help me take the boxes from downstairs and put them straight into the U-Haul, since everything was already brought down. Nobody showed up. It was just my family. nobody showed up. It was a weird feeling, and it did hurt a little bit. It did sting, I'm not gonna lie. um, there was literally one person actually that showed up, and he's such a fucking real one, because he wasn't even feeling good that day. My buddy Matt, he came by. He basically said what's up. He wasn't feeling that great, so he was pretty much in and out of the house within 30 minutes to an hour, right? And that's cool. I don't expect somebody to be there for 4 hours and all this other stuff, but I digress. There was one person that showed. Everybody else, nobody showed at all. It was kind of crazy, actually. And then most of them didn't even text me either to say like, hey, my bad, I'm sorry I missed it, yada yada. Like, So off we went to start our life in a completely different state. Those same exact people that were supposed to help me and didn't show, never called. I eventually ended up calling a few of them, just to say what's up, but none of them ever called. It was kind of crazy. I was a little salty at first, I had a lot of time to think about it, and the more I thought about it, I see that the blame isn't completely right on them. And look, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying them saying they're gonna show and then not showing isn't their fault. Like that's just their fault, right? I began to blame myself. My communication prior to my fiance was lacking, to say the least, and that was just because I was in a super toxic relationship that really isolated me, and I could have done something about it. Clearly, like, I look in hindsight, obviously you see now, that I could have been doing things differently, but I was just in a really bad spot at the time. That was a 4-year relationship that detached me from my friends, and in other words, I was absent. And how can I expect people to remember me when I wasn't even there for a lot of stuff, right? So I thought about it some more, right? And here's the thing: when those instances happened, my habits had changed a long time ago already. I was communicating with them. I was, doing all this other stuff and trying to hang out more with people. And I don't know, it just ended up happening. I guess my main thing is, if you're going to say you're going to help somebody do something, just follow up. You know what I mean? And if you're going to flake out, just say that you're going to flake out. I mean, at the end of the day, I would much prefer that than just complete silence for the next few years until you randomly decide to hit me up, right? My biggest takeaway from this is, no matter what, right? The people that will truly always be there for you are your family. And that's pretty much it. Friends, you will have friends that will be there for you a majority of the time. But your family are going to be the ones that are truly always going to stick by your side for the most part. Obviously, everybody's circumstances are different, but that was my biggest takeaway from that. I think it was just such a crazy experience. I didn't ever expect something like that to happen. You have these friendships that you build over X amount of years just for them to be gone in like a heartbeat, right? In a snap of your fingers, like the Thanos snap, everything is just gone just like that. And it was just such an insane experience for me. There was one point where you were all hanging out with your friends, playing outside as kids, doing whatever, and then one day that just stopped happening. And you don't know what happened. And I feel like that was the same experience I had, except now I'm an adult and I got to actually feel what happens when you realize that happened. Does that make sense? I think that makes sense. And for the people that have been here the whole time, here's to you, man. Y'all are so awesome. I fucking love you guys. I love my loyal, however many subscribers I have now. I think I have like 7 or something. I love you guys, man. Peace.